The Clinton White House was absolutely convinced that pushing gun control would help it politically. First, the Brady Bill, then the ban on so-called assault weapons, and then, in the 1994 election, we cleaned their clocks, and they didn't even see it coming. You know, kind of like a Chuck Norris roundhouse kick. But still, they persisted, pushing new regulations and restrictions. If they couldn't ban more guns, they wanted to ban gun parts. If they couldn't criminalize gun ownership, they wanted to ban the gun shows where we all gather. And when the Congress finally wised up and stopped pushing the Clinton anti-gun agenda, the lawyers stepped in with baloney lawsuits to bankrupt the gun industry. Well, that was then. This is now. It took several election cycles, but it's finally widely understood among politicians at every level that gun control is the political kiss of death. That understanding came from years of hard work and millions of dollars in contributions. I am personally grateful to Wayne and Chris, their staff, and all of you here for making the Second Amendment the political powerhouse it is today. I'm also grateful for the people responsible for the legal and educational strategy that finally brought the Second Amendment to the docket of the U.S. Supreme Court. The landmark Heller ruling changed the face of this debate forever. But I do have two questions for the court. What the heck took so long? And what exactly is going on in the heads of the 4 justices who dissented? What exactly do they think shall not be infringed really means? "27 simple words. And while I predict we will have a victory in the McDonald case over the Chicago handgun ban, I know it will not be unanimous. And I don't think that President Obama's next nominee will be much help either. You see, the decisions that come from the Supreme Court aren't really made by the justices. Sure, they hear the case and write the opinions, but victory at the Supreme Court doesn't come from an opinion. It comes from the vote. On most major occasions, 5 justices vote one way and 4 vote the other. The side that convinced the 5 justices to vote for it always wins. The real question is who those 5 justices are and what they believe. And that decision isn't made by the president. It's made by you in the voting booth when you pick the president. It all comes down to who has the votes. We've won lots of elections over the years, and we've lost a few for sure. But as long as we're winning more than we're losing, we're still coming out ahead. The enemies of freedom understand this equation, and they understand that they've been losing the votes. They've been losing at the ballot box, they've been losing in Congress, and they're losing in court. So, what did they decide? Well, they're going to fight against our freedoms and venues that are removed from the power of the vote. In the 1990s, they tried with baseless lawsuits designed to bankrupt the firearm industry. But we dragged them back to where the votes matter. First, back to the state legislators, and then back to the Congress. We pushed relentlessly for passage of the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, and President Bush signed it into law. Now those baseless lawsuits are prohibited. The system worked. The votes prevailed. Now they're pushing international treaties to restrict our rights. We've all heard the big lie about American guns fueling the Mexican drug wars. But when the footage from the Mexican drug wars shows machine gun battles, grenades, and RPGs, you don't have to be Walker, Texas Ranger to figure out that guns sold at retail in America have nothing to do with it. Of course, that hasn't stopped Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Attorney General Eric Holder, and even President Obama himself from suggesting that our rights should be restricted. The President has demanded that the Senate ratify a treaty known as CIFTA, formerly known as the OAS Treaty. OAS. I thought that meant Obama's Adoration Society. Now, anyway, the experts have said that the treaty, which has been tabled for over 10 years, unapproved by the U.S. Senate, contains dozens of provisions that can be interpreted to require more restrictions on our Second Amendment rights. That's just one threat to our freedom to keep and bear arms. The United Nations is cooking up a pile of its own. There are no less than 7 major UN meetings focused on restricting guns scheduled for the rest of this year alone. The first time the United Nations tried to pass a major gun control, only one nation stood in its way. You want to guess which one? The United States. You're right. The Bush administration UN ambassador, John Bolton, stood before the United Nations and told the delegates in no uncertain terms that this country would not agree to any document that called for any form of abridgment of our Second Amendment rights. And that ended that, at least for a while. Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has changed the tune. She has told the silk stocking set that the United States will consider a gun control treaty if it's done by consensus. When the first treaty effort resulted in the rest of the world standing united against America, what do you think the result of this so-called consensus is going to be? The United States is a unique and exceptional nation, and we don't need the consensus of tin-pot dictators and human rights violators. How about instead we develop a consensus right here in this room? Do we have a consensus that the United Nations needs to stay away from our guns? Let me hear your vote right now. It all comes down to the vote. Only the vote can protect those 27 simple words. And I mean each and every individual gun owner's vote in every precinct and every district in this nation. There are too many gun owners who are not NRA members. So they don't know about these threats, and they don't realize the power of their vote and how much it matters. I'm concerned about the direction this country's heading. And I want to make sure that my children and my grandchildren enjoy the same freedoms that we all do. And that's why I agreed to serve as honorary chairman of the NRA's Trigger the Vote campaign.